So now in this section, you will get to know about the form validation in Flutter, that how we can validate a form in our Flutter application. So first of all, on the emulator, you will see the login page which we have created in our week 1. So here we have validated these two forms. Like when you type some wrong email in here, let's say 123, and click this login button, so it is saying email is not correctly formatted, and the password, it is saying form must not be empty. And if you also remove this 123 from here and click this login, it will say the same message, form must not be empty. And let's say type some correctly formatted email, let's say, and click this login button, so this field become validated, and it only check if the field has the @ or not. If it has, simply we are saying this form is validated. And for the password, if you type again 123 the same and click this login, it will say must be at least 6 characters. So let's type 3 more characters, let's say 4, 5 and 6, and click this login button. So this navigate us to the success page. So that's how the validation is in Flutter. So now we are going to learn how we can validate the forms just like this in our Flutter application. So again, initially we have the simple Flutter application with an app bar and within some text of form validation. So now down here in the body of the scaffold, we are going to have the same login page code which we have wrote in our week 1. So now let's open this up, and that is the same code which we have wrote in our week 1. Now Ctrl+S to reload, and you will get the same login page on your emulator. So for now, nothing is validated in here. When you click this login button, nothing will happen. If you write something 1, 2, 3, and nothing will happen on this login button. So to validate these forms here, in the text form fields, we have the property of validator, and that validator is a function which as arguments accept the value, and that value will be the value which we type in here. Like in this case, this 123 is our value, and according to that value, we will check the condition. And our first condition on our email text form field will be, if the value is empty, simply we will return form must not be empty. And the second condition of the email will be, if the value do not contains this @, simply we will say email is not correctly formatted, and in the else condition we will return null. So now after this, the same will be for the password field. So let's copy this out and paste this in here, and simply the second condition of the password will be different from the email. So in the second condition of the password, we will say if the value was less than 6, we will say must be at least 6 characters. So that's how we have wrote the condition for our fields in the validator property of this text form fields. Now after this, Ctrl+S to reload, and when you click this login, nothing will happen, just because we have not implemented yet the code that how this gesture works when you click this to show some messages according to this condition in the validator property of the text form field. So to make this work, here we have the column widget, or any widget that has down the tree these text form fields. So in here, in the case, you can also wrap this column or this container, and wrap this column with the widget of form, and this form has one compulsory property, that is the child. And again, you can also wrap any other widget that has down the tree these two form fields, and this form will then create the container for these two fields to validate them. And that form has one more property, that is the key property, where we pass our form key, and that form is a stateful widget, and stateful widget has by default the key in the constructor. So now if you go to its detail, hold Ctrl and click this form, and you will be navigated to this code. This form is a stateful widget, or also the class that extends the stateful widget. So here simply we wrap our column with this form, and simply in the key property we pass this form key. So the keys in Flutter are basically the unique identifiers to represent a widget in the widget tree, and again that are by default passed in the constructor of the stateful widgets. Like you can also see, we have this my home page which is a stateful widget, and it has also this key in its constructor, and that is the identifier to represent that widget in the widget tree. So now we have created this form key that will be our variable. So we create this form key variable with the global key. So what is this global key? The global key is the key that will unique across the entire application, and that global key also uniquely identify the elements, and most importantly, the global key provide access to the state of the stateful widgets. And we are accessing the state of our stateful widget, which is this form, and from the state we will access the current state of our form, and this form state has a method of here in its real implementation, it has the method of validate. So from the current state on that method, we will check if our form is validated or not. If it's validated, simply we will navigate our user to the success page. Otherwise, we will show the messages that are in the properties of the text form fields. So simply in here, the GlobalKey provides access to the state of the stateful widget, and we are accessing the state of our form, and from the state we will access the validate method of this form, and on base of that we will check if the forms are validated or not. If they are, simply navigate us to the success page. Otherwise, show the messages that we have put in the properties of text form fields right in here. So now we have passed the form key in here, and we have created the GlobalKey just like this. So now before going forward, let me tell you one more thing. There are also some other keys in Flutter like value key, object key, and the unique key, and each key has its own functionality. So if you want to learn more about the keys of Flutter, simply head over to flutter.dev and you will find more useful documentation about the keys in Flutter. So after this done, here we will come down and where we have the login button. So we have the login button in here, the container, and its alignment is in the center. So we have wrapped this container with the gesture detector. Gesture detector is the widget which makes our widgets clickable. So in the on tab property of the gesture detector, we will call our login method. And now let's go and create this login method. So we got this login method in here. So inside this, we will check if our form key, that is the global key, which give access to the state of our form widget, and from this form key we will do to access to the current state of the form, and simply, as I said, simply access to the validate method. And in the body we will do the navigator push to the material page route and simply navigate us to the success page. And in the else condition we will return null. So here we are checking if our form current state is validated. As this form widget here, it creates the container for the form fields down the tree in here and will validate them. So this creates the container for them, and simply we access the state of this form in here using this global key, and simply here we are checking if our current state of forms, meaning that if the fields inside the current state are validated, simply navigate us to the success page, otherwise return null. And now let's go and create this success page. So we have created the stateless widget of the success page which has the build method and the scaffold app bar. We have the text of success, and in the column we have the center widget. The column main axis alignment is in the center, and in the center we have a large container of width and height of 300, and it has shape of circle. Its color is green, and inside this container we have in the center the icon of done, and in the app bar we have the success again. And as we are using the navigator push, so this page will come on top of our form validation page, meaning that in the stack, as this navigator use stack method, and simply this will by default give us the back icon to go back to our form validation page. So now after this, how to start your application to reset everything. So now let's try out our validations in here. Now if I type in here 123 and click this, you can see we got the same messages as we have got in the previous application, which was the test application. It is saying email is not correctly formatted, which is now here this condition is true here. Now this email do not contain this there. Simply on base of that, it is saying 123. It is saying email is not correctly formatted. Now if I remove this text from here and simply click this login, now the first condition is true, the value of the text is empty. Now let's type the correct email just like this, click this login, and this become validated. And now after this, also type from 1 to 6 to 7, let's say, and click this. Or let's say first of all, let's check this also out and click this login. It says must be at least 6 characters. Okay, let's type some to 7, click this login. This navigate us to the success page and go back. So that's how we can validate our forms in our Flutter application. So first you have to put the validator property, and according to that you have to check the condition that how your form will be validated, and simply then wrap your widget that has down the tree the form fields with the form widget, and simply in the key pass the form key and access to the form state and check if the current state of the form is validated, meaning that the fields inside the current state of the form are validated. Simply navigate us to the other page or do something else in your application, otherwise they turn null. So your forms will be navigated just like this in a Flutter application.